Excuse me. This is a video review for Scream 4, which kind of rebooted the franchise as well as created a new chapter in the Scream universe. To me, this chapter wasn't the best. In fact, this series has not had a bad chapter yet, in my opinion. Like I said, I'm kind of unbiased. When it comes to horror, for the most part, I'm pretty hard to disappoint. I'm not sure why that is sometimes, but what are you going to do? It's my opinion. So, I think some people judge this chapter too harshly, simply because it was not successful in theaters, it did not make nearly as much money, and Kevin and Wes, when it comes to horror, Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven, to me, are geniuses when it comes to horror. Of course, then again, I said the same thing about the Saw series after finally watching it. I do like the idea that Wes Craven directed all 4 of the Scream movies, so he knew what audiences expected. I'm not sure if he originally signed on to do all 4 of the Scream movies, but he did, and he did a very nice job with them. But he still had to cash in on the blood and the guts. The cliches in this film are pretty much what you'd expect. I mean, we get a phone call from an anonymous killer, and we get, I mean, the opening sequence was pretty wild, to say the least. The killer was somewhat a surprise to me. My mom, when she watched it with me, she was kind of surprised too. My mom and I are both fans of this franchise, but even she feels that they need to be done after part 4. The only problem is, yes, they wrapped it up nicely, but the only problem is they opened new doors for more chapters. And after this, they really need to be finished. It's been 10 years since the massacre in Woodsboro, yada yada yada. You get the idea. I do think that some people that did like this chapter, they knew what to expect, and they were not exactly overly critical of it. But at the same time, I think certain critics just expected too much from it. So, I will continue to watch Kevin Williamson movies as well as Wes Craven movies until they decide to retire or whatever happens. I don't think that they're bad at doing horror flicks, because they're not by a long shot. When they decided to revamp the horror franchise with Scream, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I expected a lot more comedy from the first one. I got some comedy, but mostly it was all subtle humor, as I call it. When they decided to bring back the 3 remaining characters for Scream 4, I'm glad they did it the way they did for the most part, because they still had a way to address the characters, the ones that you're supposed to care about, that is. And they did a relatively nice job bringing back the characters that you've known to grow and love. Dewey and Gale, as you may have guessed from the way Scream 3 ended, are now married somewhat happily. But Gale's still trying to figure out where she belongs in the world in this one. I don't want to tell you anything else about the plot other than the fact that the killer's back. We've got a new killer copying the original Scream murders. And there is a connection between Scream 4 and the new Stab movies. There is also a connection between Scream 4 and also a lot of other horror flicks that have been made over the years. Yes, there is a few references to Saw, and I did not have a problem with that because Saw is one of the newest franchises out there. I'm kind of glad they didn't bring Hostel into the mix, though. Because, like I said in my review for Saw 3D, I barely got through Hostel, and Hostel was in my opinion, more bloody and more graphic than the Saw movies. But I'm getting off track here. Wes Craven, to me, is a very good director when it comes to horror. Last House on the Left, Nightmare on Elm Street. I have not seen his version of The Hills Have Eyes, but I admire him for taking over The Hills Have Eyes remakes as far as executive producer, and I like that about him. If a movie that gets remade from one of his stories, and he decides to kind of stand in as executive producer instead of director, I don't have any issues with that. Even the Nightmare on Elm Street remake wasn't that bad to me, but I must be in the minority because a lot of people that are known to love Freddy Krueger from the Robert Englund are not going to get the same thing from the Nightmare on Elm Street. But the way the only disappointment that I had with Nightmare on Elm Street the remake was that it ended almost scene for scene as to how the original one by Wes Craven did. The killer in Scream 4 was somewhat of a surprise. And I like it when the killer is a big surprise. I was very impressed with who they came up for the killer in Scream 2. I don't understand. I mean, I guess Wes and Kevin feel they make money with the movies, so they have to keep going with them. On the other hand, they could have ended it a little bit differently than they did. They could have ended it more conclusively, in my opinion. Other than that, I liked it. I was impressed with how they brought the characters back, and I was impressed with some of the comedy that was in this one. I get off track a lot in my reviews, I know, so just bear with me. I think that they really need to be done this time because, I mean, with Scream 3 may have been successful in theaters, but Scream 4 must have been a flop. But I'm glad some people actually liked it, myself included. They cashed in on the blood and the guts, and they cashed in on modern horror cliches from this past decade. So I don't know. The trailer makes it look pretty cool. And the truth of the matter is, if you liked the first three, you may be relatively impressed with this one as well. I know I was. But then again, I'm a pretty big horror fan, so what can you do? Thank you for your time, YouTube, and I hope to see some comments from some of my videos now.